that would be choosing the how over the why. And the why is always the most important part. You can always change the how, but the why, that's what we really need to pay attention to. Hey, listener, welcome to episode number 120 of Blissin' Up. So, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the house with my son Ryan. It was just the two of us. He was sitting on the counter stool in front of our big kitchen island, and I was standing across from him. We were just doing our own thing. We weren't really talking with each other at that point. When all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, "Mom, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "I already know what my intention is for this year's school year's eve." When he said that, I swear my heart skipped a beat. It was fluttering. It was a spark of bliss. I was like, now, let me give you a little bit of context as to why this is so meaningful. I started a celebration back in 2019 with my three boys, in which I created a New Year's Eve school edition for my boys on the night before school. Now, it's a very simple celebration. We cook a special dinner. I buy 12 grapes, just like we do on New Year's Eve to represent each month of the year. I buy some sparkling cider, non-alcoholic, of course, for our children to toast. And I put a pen and a piece of paper on each table setting for the kids to write their intentions for the upcoming year. After we have dinner and everybody states their intentions and everybody writes it down, we fold up the little papers, we put them in a Ziploc baggie, which is not fancy. It's a makeshift container for their intentions. I write with a black Sharpie on the Ziploc the school year, and I hold it until the next year. When the next year rolls around, we open up our prior year's intentions and we notice how much we've changed. We notice what was important to us last year. We notice what we have nurtured throughout the year, how many of our intentions we really focused on, and we name our intentions for the upcoming year. And then, this is a really cute part, at around 9 o'clock, right before everybody goes to bed, we do a New Year's Eve countdown, and we do the whole thing. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy School Year's Eve. And everybody eats their grapes. We toast with the cider and we celebrate the beginning of a brand new year. And then everybody goes to bed. Now, I love this celebration and I am adamant about hosting it every single year. We even did it the year of COVID when they weren't going back to school necessarily, but they were going into the home office to do virtual school. But it's been very important for me to teach my children the ritual of setting intentions and fresh starts and zooming in and getting excited about the year ahead. So when my son said to me, "I already know my intention for school year's Eve this year," what that meant to me was that he's been listening, he's been paying attention, and it is sinking in, right? The work is working. He is becoming the kind of person who sets intentions. I was beside myself. And then came the conflict. You see, Ryan's first day of school landed on the Thursday of the week that I was scheduled to be at Warrior Week with my two other boys. I currently have a senior in high school, a sophomore in high school, and an eighth grader. So for the senior and the eighth grader, these are milestone years. These are big transition years. And it was a deep desire for me to be able to attend my son's last Warrior Week this year. I've never gone before. The parents talk about how important and special it is to attend Warrior Week. And I really wanted to be there for my son's last year at Warrior Week and his brother's first year at Warrior Week, and the only Warrior Week where they will both be together, the sophomore and the senior. So it is a big deal for me. But so is Ryan's starting eighth grade. And the two dates were in conflict, and I cannot be in both places at once. So once Ryan told me about the intention, I verbalized what I had been secretly thinking about this whole time, but hadn't really communicated it with him because I really felt like School Year's Eve was my thing. And I've always felt that they're going to appreciate it in the cumulative effect later in life when they're older. But your kids don't really tell you how much they enjoy something when it's actually happening all the time. My kids are pretty good about telling me that kind of stuff, but not all the time. So I was internally debating, when are we going to do School Year's Eve? And I'd been looking at the calendar, and I had already decided that we were going to do School Year's Eve on August 16th, which is actually the day that this podcast airs, the Sunday that this podcast airs, because I would return from Warrior Week on the Friday before. We would have the weekend, and then that would be the first Monday that all three boys went to school together. So I thought, that's a no-brainer. We'll all do it together on that Sunday night, and then we will celebrate for the new year. But when I presented this to Ryan, he looked at me and he was like, Mom, but that doesn't make any sense because I start school on the 13th. So I don't want to do School Year's Eve on the 16th. I want to do School Year's Eve on the 12th. That's how we do it. We celebrate School Year's Eve on the night before school starts. And I said, Ryan, I get it. I understand, but I am not going to be here on the 12th. So there's nothing I can do about it. The only way that I can do it is on the 16th. And then he looked at me and he said, but can I do my own School Year's Eve the night before? Maybe I could do it with Dad. And I was heartbroken, because I could not imagine not being there for my son's School Year's Eve, a ritual that I started, a tradition that I started, a celebration that I love and that I want to be a part of. And that's when I had the big aha moment. It was a huge realization for me. There is a difference between rituals and traditions. School Year's Eve is a ritual that I have taught my children to participate in and to repeat. The tradition is that the five fingers do it together the night before School Year's Eve starts. However, when the two are in conflict, which one do you choose? The ritual or the tradition? I thought about this long and hard. And last year I had a similar issue because last year Orly was going to be in Warrior Week, the week of my kids starting school. But in his case, what we decided to do was to have multiple School Year's Eve. The difference was that I was a part of all of them. And in this case, I wasn't going to be a part of Ryan's. So I realized it wasn't the five-finger tradition that I was trying to uphold. It was my involvement that I was trying to save. I didn't want to sacrifice me not enjoying that experience with my son, not just the five fingers. Parenting, it can be tough, especially when you have milestone years. There's conflicts. You're torn between two things that feel so equally important to you simultaneously, and one has to give. So which one gives? After thinking about it for a few days, I decided that the ritual must trump the tradition. Because here's the thing. School Year's Eve, the why behind School Year's Eve. Yeah, it's beautiful that we do it together, and it's all a wonderful celebration. But the why behind the celebration is to create humans who live with intention and who care about living with intention. And it didn't feel right to take away my son's practice that I realized he has created as a habit that he honors, that he cares about, so that we can uphold the celebration part, the tradition part of being together. That would be choosing the how over the why. And the why is always the most important part. You can always change the how. But the why, that's what we really need to pay attention to. So, this is how it's going to go down this year. Ryan and Orlando are celebrating School Year's Eve on the night before school starts, while Orly, Justin, and I are at Warrior Week. And then tonight, on the night before everybody's first Monday, we are going to do a second School Year's Eve. Not for Ryan, because his will have been done already, but for Orly and Justin, so that they can too experience their ritual and set their intentions for this last school year for Orly and for Justin's sophomore year. I will, of course, invite Ryan to share his intentions with us during that dinner so that we can still have that little 5-finger part of it. But I will not sacrifice Ryan's School Year's Eve for my benefit this year. So I'm leaving my husband armed and ready to go with his grapes, his little piece of paper, his pen, his Ziploc bag, and his sparkling cider, and instructions how to follow the ritual the way I like it. Maybe they'll change it. I'm not sure. Orlando can be quite a rebel sometimes, but I know that it's going to be meaningful and important and special to Ryan. And he's going to start his school year his way with his intentions that he already knows what they are. And I'm so proud of that. Oh my goodness, there's a huge storm outside my house. So I think my father is very excited about this episode. My father shows up in thunder all the time, and he's been active this today. So if you hear him in the background, I think he loves this concept. So now I want to ask you. You too may have rituals and traditions in your life. Rituals like having your Sunday morning coffee before everybody wakes up in the morning, or saying your prayers before bed, or your favorite TV show that you watch on Thursday evenings, or calling your sister on the way to work every morning. And maybe you never have to choose between the ritual or the tradition. But I invite you to question, what is the ritual and the why behind the ritual versus the tradition of how you do that ritual? And if you couldn't keep the tradition because the calendar gets in the way, life gets in the way, your circumstances change, somebody's traveling, somebody's sick, the house is a mess, would you just cancel the tradition or postpone the tradition? And if you did, would you be sacrificing the ritual and then saying, okay, we'll do it next time, or we'll do it next week, and then actually letting it drift and losing it in the process? Because that's usually how things die down. It's not a big intentional breakup with a ritual. It's slow, it's quiet, it's subtle. It happens because we want to protect the how of things And when the how isn't possible, we abandon the why. My invitation to you is to pay attention to the difference, to really think about what it is that you are protecting in your life. And is it intentional? And sometimes, like this time, you will sacrifice the tradition to uphold the ritual. But you will do it because you want to preserve the intention behind it. And I'm here to tell you that that's okay. The work is working. And that is what matters most. So I'm off to go celebrate School Year's Eve with my children, even though my son Ryan has already celebrated his School Year's Eve this year. And I am very excited to know that as our seasons change and as our lives change and as my children grow and the 5 fingers starts to look a little differently, I've planted seeds in their hearts to let them continue rituals with or without me. Have a happy Sacred Sunday, and I will see you next week. If this landed and you've realized in this episode that you've been more stuck on the how than the why, and you know when that happens, when you're protecting the how more than the why and maybe letting the entire ritual drift altogether, then this is the work that we do in the well. Every week, all year, with women who refuse to drift past the things that matter most to them, go to carolinedeposada.com, the well, and I would be honored to have you. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. It means the absolute world to me. Now, if this show helps you live with a little more intention and you love it, the best way to support it is by following wherever you listen and leaving a rating or a review. That is how new listeners can find us, and it helps more than you can imagine. So until next time, keep noticing the sparks of bliss in your life. Bye for now.